the northeast Indian state of Assam, an exotic blend of the subcontinent and East Asia. This is a centre of Tantric Hinduism, built upon the tenets of spiritual purification and control. Goats, now substitute for the humans, routinely sacrificed here as recently as the 19th century. But outside the confines of the temple, human blood still flows, as this ethereal world collides with the realpolitik of the 21st century. Northeast India serves as a crucible for more than a dozen insurgent groups. One of the largest, the United Liberation Front of Assam, or ULFA, has spent more than 20 years waging a war of secession against India. A struggle that's claimed more than 10,000 lives in the past decade.
The Indian government, Indian state, our resource আছে resourceখিনি তাহাঁতি ইয়াৰ পৰা নি আমাক শোষণ কৰি আছে সেই শোষণ কৰাৰ কাৰণে আমি তাৰ এগেইনষ্টে আন্দোলন কৰিছো
The government insists the rebels are all but defeated, that Assam has finally embraced peace.
If you have felt it that this is a place where you are having insurgency, I'll be surprised. I mean, I think the life has come to a normalcy.
Despite such hollow assurances, at least 800 people were killed here last year. In Assam, the gods have always been appeased through sacrifice. And more blood will now be shed in this conflict that barely penetrates Western consciousness. The faded glory of the British Raj lives on in the great tea gardens of Assam. Every morning, Krishna Kalita sets out from his sandbagged homestead, flanked by police bodyguards. What was a life of privilege has turned into one of the most dangerous jobs in the state. As manager of the Manoka Tea Estate, he's a key target of ULFA guerrillas who operate from the sanctuary of camps in Bhutan, barely 2 kilometres away. Krishna offered to fill in for 3 months. He's been here nearly 2 years.
The management selected few people to come over, take over from me and to release me. They have failed to come and report. So under circumstances, I am continuing here.
The people Krishna Kalita fears are in fact his next-door neighbours. His tea estate lies right on the international boundary with Bhutan, the small mountain kingdom where sympathy for the insurgents runs high. In fact, there's an ULFA camp just over that hill, and Krishna knows that at any time he can be killed or kidnapped, despite the massive presence here of more than 100,000 Indian troops, who are either unable or unwilling to stop the attacks. Over the past decade, dozens of estate managers have been kidnapped or murdered by the rebels. Krishna's predecessor was abducted, then released, only after the equivalent of $1 million was paid. Twice the rebels have come for Krishna, and twice he's convinced them to consider the welfare of his workers.
They came with a gun, with the AK-47 rifles. Then we had some interaction. I said, what is wrong with me? I am at least keeping the garden alive. A family of about 5,000 population here. So if you people go on creating the disturbance, the production will be immediately grinding out.
The highly lucrative tea industry is seen as both a saviour and curse of Assam. More than 1 million people are employed on the immense tea gardens, planted a century ago during the days of the Raj. The British are long gone. The masters now, managers such as Krishna, working for Indian corporations based in far-off Calcutta. Ulfa claims this is simply colonialism by another name, siphoning off huge profits, while Assam remains one of the most undeveloped states in India. On this point at least, Krishna Kalita, himself an Assamese, can only agree.
Since last 40 years, I remember, there has been no significant development in Assam, particularly northeast.
To visit the state capital, Guwahati, is to immediately appreciate another grievance of the Assamese. In just 3 decades, Assam's population has doubled to 25 million. The vast majority have entered illegally from neighbouring Bangladesh and continue to pour in at the rate of 300,000 people a year. Assamese tribes, such as the Boros, fear being swept away by this tide of humanity. They have much in common with the forest people of Burma and Thailand. To them, the brash entrepreneurial newcomers are from another world. Little wonder then that this is the heartland for Ulfa and other insurgent groups.
My support আছে কেনেকুৱা মই মিয়াবিলাক দেখিবই নোৱাৰো
The Boros say early attempts at peaceful coexistence failed because there were simply too many newcomers. Treasured forests were destroyed and their all-important fish stocks depleted. When pleas for government assistance failed, this village elder took matters into his own hands.
এভেকশন করেছো আৰু ইয়াত মই আমি কৈছো ইয়া আমি সব গছ ৰুই দিম গছ ৰুইলে আমাৰ উন্নতি হ'ব খৰিখাৰি পাব ঘিন
On the streets of Guwahati, we find Krishna Kalita's son, Prabin, who has no intention of following his father's career path to the estate.
We are worried about him staying there because his garden is in a militancy-infested area, and moreover, there's a huge communication gap between where I live and his garden.
Prabin is a journalist with the equally perilous task of covering the insurgency for one of India's national papers, the Hindustan Times. Delving into the grim underbelly of the conflict, he says, reveals corruption on a massive scale.
The fact is that both the government and the Ulfa leaders, they think that it's the militancy is an industry here, and in fact it is an industry.
Both sides, in this neglected corner of India, use the insurgency as a substitute development fund. Ulfa leaders line their pockets with hefty tea executive ransoms, while state government officials take their cut out of the chaos.
If they actually spend $10 in combating militancy, their bill submitted to the central government will be around $50, which means they have an extra income of $40.
Prabin's claims are given currency as we're stopped and searched by Indian troops near his father's tea estate. There are some 2,000 Ulfa rebels in the nearby hills of Bhutan, and we are unwelcome witnesses to a military build-up, as the Indians, with Bhutan's permission, prepare to destroy the rebel camps. Everyone, including Ulfa, knows the attack is coming, just as everyone knows the camps are now deserted. but the Indian forces will still go through the motions. And of course New Delhi will get the bill.
It's an industry, it's a very good business.
Assamese New Year, a time for celebration. Guest of honour is the state's Chief Minister, Prafulla Kumar Mahanta, New Delhi's man in Assam. He's survived numerous assassination attempts and these days exudes a heavily armed confidence. His are the politics of denial. Ulfa, he says, is all but finished. Merely a shadow of the insurgent group that very nearly took control of Assam a decade ago. He says public confidence has returned and the tea estates are now free from rebel attack.
আজি সেই সিচুৱেশ্যনৰ চেঞ্জ হৈছে, সেই সিচুৱেশ্যন ডেভেলপ হ'ল আজি। আজি মানুহ 6টা বজাৰ পিছতো ধুনীয়াকৈ ঘূৰি থাকিব পাৰিছে। নতুন ব্যুৰ'ক্ৰেটিক ছেটআপ লৈ পেলাই আমি কাম আৰম্ভ কৰিব পাৰিছোঁ। আৰু এটা পিচফুল এটমছফিয়াৰ ঘূৰি আহিছে ইয়াত, ফ্ৰীলি চব ঘূৰিব পাৰিছে। গতিকে এতিয়া যিবিলাক এক্সটৰ্চন চলিছিল আগতে সেইবিলাক কমপ্লিটলি ষ্টপ কৰিব পৰা গৈছে।
But this bland reassurance is contradicted by the reality on the streets. The colour and chaos of New Year gives Ulfa an opportunity to slip into town undetected. We're directed to a safe house to meet cadres of the movement. They welcome our interest in a conflict largely ignored by the outside world. A couple of these militants weren't even born when the struggle began in the late 70s. But the issues remain the same. Assam, they say, has been swamped by outsiders, neglected by an indifferent national government, exploited by the tea barons.
Tea garden or maximum jikhini amar labor ase, ba jikhini tea utpadon hoise, he bostukhini amar Asamiya manhor sarthot howa nai. Jikhini ami utpadon hobo lage, jikhini amak employment hobo lage tea pora, Asamiya manhor jodi hekhini palaheten amar Asamkhonor bahut unnoti hote.
No, government যিবিলাক ইনচাৰ্জেন্সি গ্ৰুপে কিডনেপ কৰিছে, গভৰ্ণমেণ্টে টাফ একশ্যন লৈছে, ৰিলিজ কৰি আনিব পাৰিছে তেওঁলোকক। আৰু সাধাৰণতে কিডনেপ কৰে তেওঁলোকৰ টকা ডিমাণ্ড কৰি পেলাই এক্সট্ৰকশ্যন পাৰপাছত। কিন্তু এতিয়া গভৰ্ণমেণ্টে লোৱা ব্যৱস্থাৰ কাৰণে সেইটো ষ্টপ কৰিব পৰা গৈছে।
But it's been widely reported in the local press here that 4 tea executives have simply vanished off their estate, that there is no other explanation, that the widely held view here is that they are being held captive.
Not now.
No? That's not true.
Ulfa says such claims are absurd. Tea companies, they argue, are legitimate targets of the struggle, and managers continue to be kidnapped despite government denials.
December 2জন কৰিছো আমি আৰু জানুৱাৰীত এজন কৰিছো ফেব্ৰুৱাৰীত এজন কৰিছো আমি তেওঁলোকক একো কষ্ট থাকিবল দিয়া নাই জাস্ট আমি এতে দেখাইছো যে আমাৰ জিতু লাগে আমাক যিখিনি আমাৰ ন্যায় লাগে হেখিনি আমি পাব লাগে আৰু যদি ভাৰত চৰকাৰে বা ইন্ডিয়ান গভৰ্ণমেণ্টে যদি এই ন্যায়খিনি বুজি পায় আৰু আমাক যদি হেখিনি ওপৰত সময় দিয়ে তেলে আমি তেওঁলোকক নিশ্চয় এৰি দিম নতুবা তাৰ বিপক্ষে কিবা ব্যৱস্থা লম।
Necessary measures is, of course, a euphemism for murder. And the man with the task of making the necessary response is Police Commander G.M. Shrivastava, the mastermind of Assam's counterinsurgency campaign. He's a somewhat eccentric figure, a former archaeologist and university lecturer, fond of drawing parallels with his past career.
I have been a trained archaeologist, I have excavated a few sites. Once I have taken up the task, I have to do with the same sincerity, as I would have done teaching my students over there. Maybe the teacher in me makes me study the problem a little deeper. The teacher in me takes them as the young students who have to be corrected.
It may be a nice academic turn of phrase, but there's nothing collegiate about Mr. Shrivastava's methods. In Guwahati, his so-called student correction usually takes the form of a dawn raid by heavily armed police commandos.
if they do have weapons, definitely they will try to fire us. Then definitely we will open fire, we'll kill them.
They've heard that Ulfa is attempting to infiltrate a hit team into the city. And we join a raid on the suspected guerrilla hideout. This is a deadly serious business. Half of such raids will end in a shootout at point-blank range. Many of the 435 militants who died last year were killed this way. But there's no Ulfa hit team to be found. Just a student who hails from the Buro tribal area we'd visited a few days earlier. He's immediately detained for questioning.
They're under pretension of students. They are doing all the recce's regarding police movement, regarding VIP movements, everything. So they are being financed by Ulfa.
Later, police tell us that after lengthy interrogation, 21-year-old Nilu Das has confessed to being an Ulfa intelligence officer. He now faces a lengthy jail term. But the authorities don't always win. As we filmed this raid, another 4 police commandos were killed by Ulfa in an ambush outside town. These Ulfa guerrillas are more than just a bunch of youthful idealists. They prowl the jungles of Assam, trained and equipped by those with a very different agenda. Ulfa has an alliance with India's archenemy, Pakistan. And the guerrillas confirm what has long been suspected: their close links to Pakistan's intelligence service, the ISI.
Drugs dealing walot kam kore aru ami drugs kam nokoro. They তেওঁলোকে আমাক সহায় কৰে through Bangladesh আৰু Myanmar, Bhutanৰ পৰা তেওঁলোকে পাকিস্তানী arms আমাক দিয়াত সহায় কৰে ISI.
Disturbingly, the insurgency has now entered a new phase, sliding into the familiar template of modern conflict, where civilians are targeted for their ethnicity. Last December, 28 migrant workers from the Indian state of Bihar were lined up and shot. 2 boys survived the massacre, witnessing the murder of their fathers as they fled.
एक ठो जो इतना इनका ऐसा था बड़ा इतना मैंने छोटा वो बोला सब बिहारी को मार दी बोला गया ऐसे बोल के इतना ही सुना तो हम लोग एक लोग उधर गया ना तो हम लोग जब बोला कि अब पीछे से हम मार भी देने से कोई बात नहीं हम लोग अब दौड़ के चलो हम लोग भाग गए तो 3 जन हम लोग था.
In the past, Ulfa had killed migrant labourers and swiftly claimed responsibility. But no one was willing to take the credit for this massacre.
এইটো নহয় যে এতিয়া বিহাৰৰ পৰা যিবিলাক মানুহ আহিছে সিহঁতে আমাৰ থলুৱা যিবিলাক অসমীয়া আছে সিহঁতৰ মুখৰ ভাত খাই আছে এইটো হয় কিন্তু সেই বুলি আমি এইটো নাভাবো যে সিহঁতে কাম কৰি খাইছে আমি সিহঁতক হত্যা কৰিলে আমাৰ যোনটো আমাৰ লক্ষ্যত উপনীত হ'ব পাৰিম সেইটো নহয় আৰু এই গোটেইবিলাক এটা এটা গভীৰ ষড়যন্ত্ৰ এটা কৰা হৈছে আৰু আমাক মিছাকৈ বদনাম দিয়া হৈছে.
Ulfa points the finger at these men. In a public relations coup for the police, 300 Ulfa guerrillas formally surrendered to Chief Minister Mahanta last year. After the ceremony, their guns were promptly handed back, and they joined the pro-government militia, the surrendered Ulfa, known as Sulfa.
गए पेलाई 2 किलोमीटर 3 किलोमीटर गए.
It's a cornerstone of Police Commander Shrivastava's strategy of fighting terror with terror. He boasts that his Sulphur militia can kill the rebels anywhere, anytime.
One such agent of mine in their camp, he killed 9 of them and came out. They can take a lesson from that. If I feel like really going destructive and want to go for the inhuman methods of containing this militancy, I can engineer another such case and the whole camp can be blown over there.
But since this ceremony, dozens of civilians have been mysteriously murdered. Most were relatives of rebels still fighting for Ulfa. There's growing suspicion that the government-sponsored Sulphur is nothing more than a death squad.
Quite a few instances, there are few survivors who can say, who actually have said that they have identified their attackers and who are former Ulfa militants.
I am afraid of now. I am deadly afraid of Salfas, not Alphas.
The ones who've surrendered to the government. You're more frightened.
That's right. This is because they are supported by the government. Now the election is coming. The paper news is that either ruling party or the parties wants to come for next election to win and rule. They're taking help of those people.
And the surrendered Ulfa are killing people.
Killing people.
In May, Chief Minister Mahanta himself was felled, not by an Ulfa bullet, but at the ballot box. His Hindu nationalist coalition soundly thrashed in a state election. But Ulfa can at least take part of the credit. Mahanta was unable to mobilise his party network, so vital in India's system of political patronage, because Ulfa had killed 25 of his campaign staff. And voters were in no doubt as to who was backing the mystery death squads.
Innocent relatives of Alpha leaders, they were killed there by, again, secret killers. And I think that really backfired on Mr. Mahanta.
So the terror continues, with the community increasingly alienated by authority and insurgent alike. Assam's new state government is now calling for a ceasefire. Ulfa has responded by announcing an extortion campaign to raise the equivalent of $50 million this year, while the army is quietly preparing to send in more troops. 10,000 dead in a decade, yet few outside the subcontinent seem to know or care. This forgotten yet highly profitable little war looks set to drag on. The people Krishna Kalita fears are in fact his next-door neighbours. His tea estate lies right on the international boundary with Bhutan, the small mountain kingdom where sympathy for the insurgents runs high. In fact, there's an Ulfa camp just over that hill, and Krishna knows that at any time he can be killed or kidnapped, despite the massive presence here of more than 100,000 Indian troops, who are either unable or unwilling to stop the attacks. Over the past decade, dozens of estate managers have been kidnapped or murdered by the rebels. Krishna's predecessor was abducted, then released, only after the equivalent of $1 million was paid. Twice the rebels have come for Krishna, and twice he's convinced them to consider the welfare of his workers.